Nothing came easy for Weber. He had to fight for every single inch. He was once written off as a journeyman over 100 starts with no wins to his name. Overshadowed by his younger, flashier teammate, slapped with the label of perennial number 2, the media laughed. Rivals talked down to him. And inside his own garage, Mark Webber was treated like a throwaway piece on a chessboard. Yet from Quien Bien, a small town most people couldn't find on a map, Webber turned his whole story around. Just when the world figured he'd quietly fade out, he built an unbelievably lavish life, a multi-million-dollar mansion in an exclusive neighborhood, a garage stocked with high-performance machines that only the ultra-wealthy can afford, and a behind-the-scenes influence in Formula One that most champions never achieve. The question that has everyone talking: how did a perennial runner-up walk away from the track and build a lifestyle that even world champions would envy? All of that is what we're digging into today, the full story of Mark Webber, Australia's greatest runner-up. On August 27, 1976, in the small town of Quien Bien, New South Wales, Australia, a boy was born into an ordinary working-class family. No glamour, no connections to the world of high-speed racing. His father, Alan Webber, ran a taxi and trucking business. His mother, Diane, took care of the home. His sister, Leanne, was his first childhood companion. It was from this quiet corner of Australia that Mark Webber's life began, a starting point defined by sweat, hard work, and the smell of motor oil. Webber's childhood was built around days spent in his father's garage. While other kids were out playing, he was washing cars, stocking shelves, and picking up odd jobs to scrape together a few extra bucks for parts. That environment gave Mark something money can't buy: discipline, diligence, and a grinded-out toughness that would later become his greatest weapons on the racetrack. He wasn't raised with a silver spoon, but he soaked up a deep sense of perseverance from day one. School didn't dim that fire either. From Trangie Street Primary School to Carabar High School, Mark stood out not just for his height, but for his passion for sports across the board: rugby, cricket, and Australian football. He competed in everything, always pushing himself harder. But the defining moment came at age 14, when Mark first climbed behind the wheel of a go-kart. The rush of gliding across the asphalt, the roar of the engine vibrating through his chest, that was the instant his dream of speed was born. Still, Webber's childhood wasn't without its hard knocks. He battled asthma, a condition that made playing sports risky and exhausting. But instead of stepping back, Mark pushed harder, building the physical strength to fight through his limitations. Every breathless moment became a reminder that victory never comes without a cost. In his late teens, Mark worked as a swimming instructor and picked up other part-time jobs to fund his racing passion. In a small garage, he and his father wrenched on an old cart together, getting ready for local competitions. It was a time of real hardship, but also raw determination, a small-town kid quietly nurturing the ambition to one day race on the world's biggest stages. From that Quien Bien kid with a need for speed, Mark Webber turned his dream into action with a bold move, leaving Australia for England in 1996. With a small suitcase and minimal financial backing from home, he threw himself into Europe's brutal racing scene, where motorsport wasn't just a sport, it was a fight for survival. In Formula Ford and Formula 3, Webber quickly turned heads with his aggressive driving style and an ice-cold ability to handle pressure. It wasn't long before he landed a chance to test with the Arrows F1 team, his first real foothold at the sport's highest level. In 2002, at the Australian Grand Prix, Webber made his official Formula One debut with Minardi, the weakest team on the grid. But in just one race, he stunned the paddock with sheer tenacity and raw desire, driving that uncompetitive car to a fifth-place finish on home soil, earning Minardi a historic points haul. It was a debut that exploded onto the scene and put his name on everyone's lips. After Minardi, Webber moved to Jaguar Racing in 2003 to 2004, then to Williams in 2005 to 2006. Both teams were struggling, but Webber still made noise with daring overtakes, with the press calling him the man who fights hardest with the worst hand at the table. It wasn't until he signed with Red Bull Racing in 2007, though, that his career truly took flight. In 2009, at the German Grand Prix, after 130 race starts, Webber finally clinched his first F1 victory. It was an emotional, nail-biting win that shattered the runner-up curse and confirmed him as the most resilient driver of his generation. The 2 seasons that followed 2010 and 2011 saw Webber emerge as a genuine championship contender with multiple wins. In 2010 especially, he led the standings heading into the final race, only to lose the title at Abu Dhabi to his younger teammate Sebastian Vettel. That was the moment the number 1 versus number 2 tension inside Red Bull boiled over, igniting one of the most talked about rivalries in the sport's history. Webber wrapped up his F1 career spanning 2002 to 2013 with numbers that demand respect: 9 wins, 42 podiums, 13 pole positions, and 3 third-place finishes in the overall standings 2010, 2011, and 2013. But more than the stats, he's remembered as a symbol of grit and as a straight shooter who was never afraid to tell it like it is. Not done with racing, Webber launched a new chapter with Porsche in the FIA World Endurance Championship WEC. In 2015, alongside Brendan Hartley and Timo Bernhard, he drove the Porsche 919 Hybrid to the WEC World Championship, the first major title of his career. A year later, in 2016, Webber officially hung up his helmet after 2 decades of living life at full throttle. Today, Mark Webber is no longer on the starting grid, but he's still a constant presence in the F1 world as a commentator for Channel 4, a brand ambassador for Porsche, and most notably, the manager of Oscar Piastri, the young Australian talent carrying that dream forward at McLaren. From Queanbeyan to the biggest stages in global motorsport, Webber's journey is a powerful reminder that true victory isn't always measured in championships, it's measured in how many times you get back up. If Mark Webber's childhood was spent in a dusty Queanbeyan garage, his life looked completely different once he reached the top of his sport. From a driver who started from nothing, Webber built a multi-million-dollar fortune, making him one of the wealthiest and most successful Australian athletes to ever compete on the international stage. His most recognizable asset is his stunning home in Buckinghamshire, England. Webber owns Rookery House, a mansion set on a 10-acre estate, complete with stately wooden gates, manicured gardens, and the kind of serene country atmosphere that money can buy but character has to earn. It's not just a house, it's a private retreat where he, and Neil, and her son Luke enjoy total peace and privacy. Across the globe, Webber also owns a property in Noosa Heads, Queensland, purchased around 2011 for an estimated $5 million. Situated in Australia's tropical coastal paradise, the home has a resort-like feel and was once owned by tennis star Thomas Muster. It stands today as another piece of the Webber lifestyle puzzle. But the properties are just one part of the picture. Webber's garage is the real showstopper. Even before his Porsche ambassador deal, he was already collecting the brand's finest, from a classic 1950s Porsche 356 Cabriolet to a high-performance 911 GT2 RS and a Porsche Turbo for everyday driving. He also holds onto his Red Bull RB6 F1 car, the machine that delivered so many of his podiums, as a deeply personal trophy. Beyond Porsche, Webber rounds out his collection with a BMW M5 for the thrill of street performance, an Infiniti M37 for comfortable cruising, and a Nissan Navara when he needs something practical. The collection tells you everything about the man, nostalgic, high-end, and grounded all at once. Webber's total net worth is estimated between 10 million and 40 million, depending on the source. That money flows from his F1 and WEC race earnings, endorsement deals with Red Bull, Rolex, and Porsche, his commentary work, and smart investments including a stake in Noah Media Group, a sports documentary production company, and his co-founding of Jam Sports Management, the agency that now represents Oscar Piastri. What most people don't know is that Webber once owned a small pub called the Stag in Methven, England. In a career defined by speed, he still carved out space for something warm and community-driven. It says a lot about who he really is. Today, Mark Webber keeps things relatively low-key in public. But behind that understated exterior is one of the most impressive post-racing empires in Australian sports history, a multi-million-dollar home portfolio, a garage of dreams, blue-chip endorsements, and a sharp investment network. It's the ultimate full-circle story, from washing cars in Queanbeyan to running the show. In a world of speed and spotlight, few love stories were as controversial as Mark Webber's relationship with Anne Neal. More than just his partner, Anne was his manager and closest advisor, standing by him from his earliest, most difficult days in England. What got people talking was the age difference. Anne is 13 years older than Mark. And back in the late 1990s, when Webber was a young driver in his early 20s, their relationship immediately became the subject of speculation and gossip. For the Webber family, it was a genuine shock. His father, Alan, reportedly objected so strongly that Mark's relationship with his family became strained for years. In their eyes, Neal wasn't just a romantic partner, she was an older woman with too much influence over their son's career and personal decisions. The Australian press ran with the story, treating it as a family drama and subjecting their relationship to intense public scrutiny. But in the face of all that opposition, Webber stood firm. He publicly supported Anne at every turn, seeing her role not just as a romantic choice but as a critical decision for his career. Neal brought real experience in media and sports management, helping Webber land key contracts, navigate complicated team politics, and stay grounded in the cutthroat world of F1. Over time, the noise died down and was replaced by respect. The couple settled into their Buckinghamshire mansion, and together with Anne's son, Luke Barrett, they built a solid, stable family. Webber has never shied away from crediting Anne on many occasions, stepping off a podium and pointing to her as the person who made it all possible. Her quiet, steady presence in the Red Bull paddock became one of the sport's most recognized symbols of loyalty and support. Today, after more than 2 decades together, Mark and Anne stand as proof that love can outlast gossip. What was once tabloid fodder has become a story of genuine partnership, two people who built something real in an industry that chews people up and spits them out. If success and wealth built Mark Webber's reputation, then the controversies were the shadows that followed him everywhere. His name didn't only show up in headlines for his achievements, it showed up for the raw, unfiltered moments when tension, both on and off the track, blew up without warning. The most infamous of these was the Multi-21 scandal at the 2013 Malaysian Grand Prix. Red Bull had issued a clear team order. Vettel, the number 1 driver, was to hold position behind Webber and bring home a safe, controlled result for the team. Vettel ignored it. He attacked his teammate on track, blew past him, and took the win. The image of a furious Webber standing in the cool-down room, staring Vettel down and calling him out directly, became one of the most iconic moments in modern F1 history. It pulled back the curtain on the deep fracture inside Red Bull, exposing the fact that despite being a legitimate championship contender, Webber had long been treated as the number 2 option within his own team. The truth was, that tension had been building since 2010, when Webber led the drivers' standings heading into the final race only to lose the title in Abu Dhabi under circumstances that many believed were shaped by Red Bull's preference for Vettel. The media pounced. Did Red Bull truly want a driver in his 30s to win the title, or were they protecting Vettel's future? The question was never fully answered, but the wound it left on Webber's career never fully healed either. Beyond team politics, Webber also stared down real danger on the track. The 2010 European Grand Prix in Valencia was one of the most terrifying moments of his career. His car made contact with Heikki Kovalainen's Lotus, launched into the air, flipped completely, and slammed into the barrier. Spectators held their breath, certain they had just witnessed a tragedy. Webber walked away, but the crash ignited a fierce debate about F1 safety, and Webber didn't hold back in criticizing the FIA's response. That straight talk earned him a reputation as difficult to manage, but it also cemented his image as someone who says what needs to be said. His personal life drew its own headlines too. The relationship with Neil, his older manager, and the years-long estrangement from his family, gave the tabloids plenty of material. It showed that Webber wasn't only fighting competitors out on the track, he was fighting social judgment and family conflict just as intensely off of it. Taken together, these controversies aren't just isolated incidents. They're the threads that weave together a more complicated, more honest portrait of the man. Mark Webber, someone who lived not just in the light of the podium, but also in the eye of some very real storms. And it was those storms that sharpened him, making him the frank, fearless figure that fans around the world came to respect. Over a decade and a half on the starting grid, Mark Webber never became an F1 world champion, but he made his mark as one of the finest drivers Australia has ever produced. The numbers back it up: 9 Grand Prix wins, 42 podiums, 13 pole positions, and 3 third-place finishes in the overall championship standings in 2010, 2011, and 2013. From his stunning debut with Minardi in 2002 to his fiercely competitive years at Red Bull, Webber demonstrated that a racing career isn't only measured in titles, it's measured in the willingness to keep fighting when everything is stacked against you. His first win at the 2009 German Grand Prix, after 130 attempts, wasn't just a checkered flag, it was a statement that blew apart every perennial runner-up narrative that had been written about him. And even in the seasons when he came heartbreakingly close to a world title, those near misses only deepened the respect people had for his resilience. Beyond team politics, Webber also stared down real danger on the track. The 2010 European Grand Prix in Valencia was one of the most terrifying moments of his career. His car made contact with Heikki Kovalainen's Lotus, launched into the air, flipped completely, and slammed into the barrier. Spectators held their breath, certain they had just witnessed a tragedy. Webber walked away, but the crash ignited a fierce debate about F1 safety, and Webber didn't hold back in criticizing the FIA's response. That straight talk earned him a reputation as difficult to manage, but it also cemented his image as someone who says what needs to be said. His personal life drew its own headlines too. The relationship with Neil, his older manager, and the years-long estrangement from his family, gave the tabloids plenty of material. It showed that Webber wasn't only fighting competitors out on the track, he was fighting social judgment and family conflict just as intensely off of it. Taken together, these controversies aren't just isolated incidents. They're the threads that weave together a more complicated, more honest portrait of the man. Mark Webber, someone who lived not just in the light of the podium, but also in the eye of some very real storms. And it was those storms that sharpened him, making him the frank, fearless figure that fans around the world came to respect. Over a decade and a half on the starting grid, Mark Webber never became an F1 world champion, but he made his mark as one of the finest drivers Australia has ever produced. The numbers back it up: 9 Grand Prix wins, 42 podiums, 13 pole positions, and 3 third-place finishes in the overall championship standings in 2010, 2011, and 2013. From his stunning debut with Minardi in 2002 to his fiercely competitive years at Red Bull, Webber demonstrated that a racing career isn't only measured in titles, it's measured in the willingness to keep fighting when everything is stacked against you. His first win at the 2009 German Grand Prix, after 130 attempts, wasn't just a checkered flag, it was a statement that blew apart every perennial runner-up narrative that had been written about him. And even in the seasons when he came heartbreakingly close to a world title, those near misses only deepened the respect people had for his resilience. And through it all, the community work continues, advancing cyclist road safety through the Amy Gillette Foundation and helping young people find their footing through the Amber Foundation. From a kid washing cars in Queanbeyan to 9 F1 victories, a WEC World Championship, and a second career shaping the next generation of talent, Mark Webber's story is one that proves you don't need to be handed the perfect cards. You just need to know how to play the ones you've got. His legacy isn't engraved on a world championship trophy. It's written in every time he got knocked down and got back up, and in every young driver who benefits from the lessons only someone who lived through it all could teach.